Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I remember talking to you in my office before your confirmation, Mr. Lighthizer, and I remember telling you how worried I was about ag. And you said, well, you should be. And, you know, it was startling to me. First of all, I appreciated your candor. That's unusual in this town to have somebody be that honest about it. And I know you said to one of the other senators earlier that it's going to be unfair what happens to Missouri soybeans, but it's for the national good. Well, it doesn't feel like it's for the national good to the soybean farmers. You know, this is the thing about trade, efforts to make trade more fair, is there's always winners and losers, even in the countries that are trying to push the envelope in terms of trade. And ag is going to be a big loser here if this goes down the path that we're going down. Especially if you look at where our ag products go in Missouri, which is Canada, #1, Mexico, #2, and for soybeans, China, #3. So it is really worrisome to an economy that's dependent on agriculture that we're going to say, well, it's for the national good, and you guys are just going to have to power through it. I wanted to specifically, and also, of course, the other one I'm worried about is Boeing. Do you anticipate that the airplane sales that the president trumpeted, many of which had been in works for years before he became president, do you anticipate all of those will go through with what you all are doing? Do you game this out with your algorithms that Boeing is going to continue to be able to compete in an even-handed way with Airbus, or more importantly, with the Chinese companies that are developing competitors to the Boeing aircraft?
What I said that actually concerned, which I do say, and I was saying really that I share your concern. It was not meant.
No, I know you weren't being. You weren't saying too bad for them. I didn't try to make you Simon Legree here. You just acknowledged that ag is going to be the easiest target for retaliation.
And it's something that I worry about a lot. And
and
so does Secretary Perdue, and so does the president. So with respect to NAFTA and your sales in NAFTA, it is my hope that we have a successful agreement, and that those sales are not threatened. So I want to kind of make that. And it's also my hope that we enter into FTAs that increase sales. And I try to make that point here today, too. Now, with respect to if we bring an intellectual property, I mean, if the president decides to do something on the 301, will China retaliate? That's something that's a real risk that we've talked about, we've gamed out. We have to decide what we want to do when it happens, and obviously it's not something I want to talk to you about in this forum, but I want to sit down and get your counsel on what you think we ought to do.
Yeah, I'd love to, because you did name aerospace in your list.
And aerospace is something that specifically the Chinese have decided to be part of their China 2021, and they expect to dominate in that area, and they're spending over $300 billion to do that, and they're going to, and Boeing for sure knows. I mean, they're very focused on this threat. They're focused on the retaliation threat of sales now, and they're focused on the non-economic competition they're going to have to face from China down the road. So Boeing's in this very peculiar position where they see
I would call it precarious rather than peculiar.
Long term, they have a real risk from China in terms of what China is trying to do, and they have a short-term problem. So we're sympathetic to that, and to the extent it comes to real actions afterwards, I want to work with you on that so that you're satisfied and view yourself as influencing us to do the right thing.
I'm going to try to get to one more area before I get cut off. Japan was not on the list that you listed of the countries that have been exempted, correct?
No.
Okay. And so some of this issue is about businesses that are relying on specialized steel imports. It's not a matter of price. It's a matter of availability. I mean, I've got a small company in Joplin that it relies on Japanese specialized steel to make the bearings, and it's not available in the United States. So it is not one of these things that they can actually turn to a more expensive. They're not bringing this in because they're getting it cheaper than they can get it in the United States. They're bringing it in because they can't get it. Do you have some kind of mechanism in place to rocket those kinds of manufacturing facilities to the top of your exemption list? Is there some way they can navigate this? Because they have no choice, if they want to stay in business, than to use this Japanese specialized steel they're using.
I agree with you. I'm sympathetic. There is a process at the Department of Commerce to do that. I don't really have the people they do. But if you have a specific constituent that you say is somehow lost in this process, if you bring it to me,
I think all the small businesses are going to be lost, all the small manufacturing are going to be lost in this process. It's 90 days, it's complicated, the tariff starts tomorrow. There's been nobody reaching out to these businesses that are going to be dramatically harmed by this to say, what can we do to facilitate you continuing to even get the product you must have? Nobody's doing that, Mr. Secretary.
Senator, your time is up. Senator Carper.
Okay, I just want to note for the record, Mr. Chairman, that earlier in the questioning, everybody was going over 2 and 3 minutes. When you get to the end of the table, man, it gets tough.
Mr. Chairman, the senator's got a valid point. Is there a response that the senator wants from the ambassador now before we wrap up?
I don't have any problem with that, but it's just...
No, I want to work with you.
Low-hanging fruit on trade is export-import. And the notion that you and Ross and Mnuchin can't get in the room and get export-import done is weird. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.